Samantha Graff Benmor from the Graff Group Toronto, and welcome to another episode of the Graff Group IG Live. We are going to be having a special guest. Many of you know that negotiations is a huge part of our business, and it's actually one of the most important skill sets that you probably want in a realtor. So I am going to be here today with Nandishi Bekah from Stanchieri Family Law Group, and you probably figured that one out already. She is a family lawyer, and as you probably also figured out, negotiations are extremely important in family law as well. So we are going to discuss the different ways we go about negotiating for our clients. And also we're going to discuss some tactics that you might think are the right type of negotiation styles. And hold on, and go. Hello.
Yeah.
How are you?
How are you?
Good. I was just introducing us, and welcome Nandishi Bekah from Stanchieri Family Law. Is it Family Law Group?
Just family
Family
law.
Law.
Yeah.
I've got it. And I was just saying how, the most important skill that both realtors and family lawyers must possess and you want in your hires are the skill set of negotiation. But sometimes people think that one type of negotiation style is the way to go, and it's not always your best bet. So we're going to sort of dive into that. Nandishi and I both have meetings to get to, so we apologize. We're just going to sort of drill this one out a little bit more, but it still will be a nice conversation. So welcome and thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time, as we know it's very valuable.
Thank you.
And first, let's just let everybody know your position at Stanchieri and what your typical client looks like.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a family law lawyer. I've been doing this now for about 9 years. I've been at Stanchieri for 3. My typical client, that's a tough one because no two clients are the same. But it's actually a perfect segue into why having negotiation skills is so important, because every client, every set of problems, every conflict is unique. And so if you're adaptable in your negotiation styles, that's more relatable to that person or that personality or that person's issue, you'll be much more successful. But if you're not at all willing to change your style, or at least try to understand what that person needs or what the other person in this conflict needs, likely you're not going to get very far. And so, that's part and parcel of my day, is trying to understand my client's position, trying to understand the opposing client's position, and trying to navigate through all of it in terms of, and try to get to a solution that works.
So one thing that's obviously quite similar between the two industries is that we're always trying to find a meeting of the minds. You always want everyone to feel like they won. So that's negotiation 101, shall we say. Everybody, yes, they say, I want my client to be happy. Well, what does happy look like? And you have to dig a little further to figure that out in order to get the meeting of the minds. Because what's important to one party might not be as important to the other party. And that's how we end up, getting to that middle ground. And sometimes that could take hours, and sometimes it can take months and years, and hopefully not in our business as much, but
Well, then we wouldn't be doing a really good job at negotiating.
no, exactly.
Right. That's right. Like if we come to the table anchored in our positions, and unwilling to shift, unwilling to understand perspective, um, it's not going to be a successful outcome. And to your credit, it's absolutely right. Like, we have to be able to shift and maneuver around expectations. I think that's very important. And coming to the negotiations table with the mindset of, I'm going to win and that person is going to lose, is already setting up for failure. You have to actually approach negotiations with the mindset that, like, you may have to take a back seat on some of the issues. And some of the important things to consider before you even get to negotiations is, what are your absolutely non-negotiables and what are the things that are negotiable? And that helps kind of tilt the scales, and it gives space for the other person as well to have their say. And then there's clarity around the issues. You have an understanding about what priority is your client's, what's the other person's priorities.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they may be the same, and oftentimes they're not the same. So it allows you to shift expectations, and allows for both people to quote unquote win and lose, which ends up to be successful negotiations. I know it's ironic because people say it's only successful if they end up winning,
Well,
but it's not.
what is winning,
That's
right? That's what I say. Define winning,
define.
right?
That's right. Is winning at any cost worth what it's going to take to get there? Because the alternative to negotiations is the litigation route in my work, right? And
Mm-hmm.
court is often very timely, very costly, and it's no longer in your care and control. It's up to a judge most of the time. And so you lose the leverage that you may have had in negotiations if you had only entered negotiations in the proper mindset. And so mindset is key, as well as your ability to be flexible, as well as having an open mind as to understanding the other person's perspective and point of view. That's not to say that you lose your perspective, your client's perspective and point of view, but having a greater, broader understanding lets you have a more all-encompassing view of the issues, and lets you, I guess, navigate the complexities in order to get your client as close to what they want, and where they feel like they're winning, but it's still a success at the end.
I think, unfortunately, in yours and fortunately in ours, this is not the case. I think, unfortunately, there are the emotions that are involved, and it's not to say that there aren't emotions in, especially because I do residential real estate, and as many people know, I do deal with the matrimonial home a lot. So I'm very familiar with the emotions. But when it comes to an offer settlement in your industry, I think sometimes that the upset in the relationship, the lack of trust in the relationship, there's almost this I'm going to get you. When you say that's why I say winning is a little bit different. Winning in real estate is getting the price that you want. And I mean, like you said in a little bit before, you were saying about your negotiables and non-negotiables. Well, we've sort of done that to find the house that now we're going to offer on, right? Like, when I sit down with a buyer, it's like, so what are you looking for in a house? And then they list all these things, and I go, okay, and what's the price range? And then they like tell me that, and I'm like, and you want to be in that area, And so it's like, okay, it's doable, but in my head I'm thinking, and I will probably say to them, there's going to be something that's got to give here, right? And at that point you find it, and then you go into a negotiation, with an offer, and that's where I say, like, it's emotional, but there's not as much of a history of emotions then, and anger that's associated when they're going to negotiate. And like you said, sometimes you have to put yourself in the other person's shoes, and that's a really good way of looking at it. No different in real estate. When you're a buyer, sometimes we have to sort of use that and say, what would you do if you were the seller?
That's right.
Would
Yeah.
you accept this offer?
Well, and that's one of the key things that you just said when we talk about offers. We have to put forward offers to settle all the time in our life. But what's important to remember about an offer to settle is just a paper version of negotiations. And what makes an offer effective is that it has to have a give and take. There has to be something attractive to the other party in order for the offer to be even palatable,
Right.
right? And so the offer only reflects my client's wants and needs. There's no way that the other party's going to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to accept this, because there's a clear imbalance. There's a clear winner and a clear loser. And it's important to maintain an element of reasonableness in your offer and an element of, again, like you said, perspective. What are my clients' negotiables and non-negotiables? How,
Mm-hmm.
how can I put this on paper and negotiate to the best of my ability an outcome that is favorable to my client or that my client will be happy with, while still making the offer reasonable and palatable to the other side, because they have to be getting something in this offer that makes it even worth consideration. Because if it's not even worth considering, what are we doing it for? We're
Right.
using it as a power play and saying, well, I'm going to do this. It means nothing because I already know you're not going to accept it. And then we lose credibility because our negotiation skills have gone downwards because we haven't actually used the right tools in our toolbox. We haven't taken the time to understand the other person's position. We haven't taken the time to understand what they're looking for, what they may move on, what they absolutely won't move on, and compared it to what, this side is looking for.
And I think that sometimes when ego comes into play as well, because somebody goes in just all they're thinking about, and this is where, they're not the strongest negotiators. They just go in because their client said, this is what I want. And that's all they go in with. And they're arguing for exactly what the client just told them that's what they wanted. And that doesn't really make sense. You can't come at, oh, hold on. I think Cheryl's trying to get in here. Let's see. I don't know. I just did it. Let's see if she joins or not from that. Hold on, let me try one more time. Oh, I think she's coming.
Oh, oh
Oh,
my gosh.
look at
Well,
you. We
yeah,
have a
yeah.
hard stop on an early, but
What?
just so you know, we're basically just at the point of talking about where are you looking all over the place? Maybe you shouldn't be on this.
I'm just going to really listen because I'm getting on. I'm going to get
Okay,
on the
everybody
highway.
does not really worry about where you are. You just came right in as I was
Hi, Nandishi. How are you? Hold on.
well. And here's a little tidbit. The
Yeah.
Graff group was a lot of fun with some surprises sometimes.
Oh my gosh. Did you? Yeah.
So okay, so
What's up?
well, since you came on, and since you're this senior negotiator,
Yeah.
what do you have to add to contribute to our conversation on one of the strongest negotiation moves? I just put her right on the spot there. We'll keep talking if
Uh,
we need
keep
to.
talking. Let me.
You'll
Oh my
pipe
God. There's
in.
huge. Um, uh,
So
strong
what we were
negotiation.
talking. Okay,
Yeah. Come
don't,
on.
mom. No. Well, you're on camera. You're publicly going. Okay. So we were talking about those types of, good idea, those types of negotiators who come in on behalf of their client, which is definitely our responsibility. Um, but when you come as an attack dog with just your client's needs in mind, bad move. Bad move.
Absolutely. When clients are negotiating amongst them, there's an expectation of a lot more emotion. It's very visceral. It's very personal to them. And so if they're negotiating themselves with the other party themselves, negotiations are likely
Hold on, you're going in and out for some
from a
reason.
standpoint of,
There we go.
of however, or as a third party representative or as a professional, you should have the know-how to remove the that your clients are putting on you and enter with a calm demeanor and with a perspective of, I'm looking to enter these negotiations to reach a resolution for you, not to escalate conflict, not to produce, but trying to take it off the table.
So you know what? You're breaking up a bit, and I don't know if it's only since Cheryl came on, if
No,
there's something funny.
it was breaking up. Okay, but to answer your question
Sure.
as to what is your strongest way for negotiating is you listen very carefully to what the parties have to say. And what you have to do is keep your voice very low and very calm. And it brings everybody down and they listen.
100%, Cheryl. You're absolutely right. Your tone carries so much weight. If your tone or your volume, it naturally will escalate or decrease on where you are. So if the room is getting more agitated and you get more agitated, everything gets more agitated, more high conflict. People stop listening because they get very defensive. However, if you take the time to understand, oh, okay, this is a trigger point, this is emotional, and you come at it from a perspective of like, oh, I understand what's happening in the room. So having awareness is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Who's in the room is very important. And then using your de-escalation skills to bring everybody back down to a point where they're comfortable and where they can start communicating again. So the communication are, the fulcrum of successful negotiations. And there's so much that we could probably have another live about communication,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's so centered around successful negotiations and what does that look like? But absolutely, I agree with you, Cheryl. Your tone, your demeanor. If you're sitting, back and with your arms crossed when the other side is speaking, you give off, whether intentionally or not, this impression that you're disengaged, disinterested, you're not listening, and the other side naturally will get deflective, defensive, and think, well, what am I doing this for? They're not even interested in what I have to say. So your posture is equally as important as your tone, as your language. You have to maintain an air of professionalism. Even if they come attacking you, two wrongs don't make a right. You don't attack back. You
Yeah.
try and analyze and process and maintain your composure. I think maintaining composure is just as important as getting to the end result. Without one, you can't do the other.
I have an interesting question. As a fast forward, basically a post COVID, sort of after COVID and during COVID and all that. We've all moved forward in technology. And and Cheryl obviously longer than I, like the only way you didn't even use the phone, like you only went and talked to people in person. Um, and I know that you guys moved out of the court and onto Zoom. And I have to say, like, our experience is that even when we do a negotiation now, we do not use Zoom. And as I'm saying it out loud, I'm even recognizing like we've just automatically gone to the phone. And that's the replacement. So there's no visual whatsoever. And I'm just wondering, um, from your experience of doing it in court and then doing it on Zoom, um, how has that benefited and also challenged you in getting the negotiation done? Like, does it take longer, for example?
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. In my experience, in-person negotiations have a much higher success rate. When the parties are in person and have to be faced with each other or in front of a judge or in front of counsel, and they take
Al?
Sorry.
There's a
Sorry, I'm not in their way. Okay.
Um,
Sorry.
have an appetite to want to try to resolve the issue because they're there physically. And when you have the opportunity to see somebody's face, okay, it's just as powerful as language because there's emotion that's written on the face. There's truth that's written on a face. And you don't necessarily get that, nor does it translate as accurately as it would on a video, or certainly not on the telephone. And that's so negotiation wise, you're trying to reach a settlement in person has a much higher success rate in my experience and in my view.
Yeah.
I find that, unless you have counsel who already have a previous relationship, who've worked together before, who've built a rapport with each other, have trust with each other, it's possible to reach a resolution via Zoom or via, a screen. Does it take longer? Yes, because the clients have this inherent distrust for each other. And there's only so much that counsel can bridge that gap when everybody's hiding behind a screen.
Right.
Right. And more difficult is on the phone. So that's complete disconnection. It's very difficult to have successful negotiations on the phone. It's not impossible. Can it happen? Yes. That wouldn't be my natural inclination, but it does happen.
Yeah. And I think also, like you're saying, that there's another really big difference in that different, and this is amongst different realtors and different lawyers. You can't know when there's thousands and thousands of realtors and lawyers and everybody, you can't know everybody. But there is something to be said about the people who do have relationships and working together. And on top of that, just having a good reputation in the business. And a good reputation of being a strong negotiator does not mean that you're, I don't want to use any foul language, but some people will say, oh, well, they're like such a top realtor or something. I heard they're so aggressive. I'll use the word aggressive in a negative way. Okay. That's me trying to say, not the nicest person. And there's nothing wrong with being tough about your negotiations, but in the same boat, you know, at the end of the day, there you can only do so much and lead so much your client and give them like advice, but at the end of the day, it's always their choice. So sometimes we, as representatives of our clients, can only do so much. And you would hope that whether you're two realtors trying to get that meeting of the minds, or you're two lawyers doing that on behalf of your clients, that you're working together, not against each other, not like that's where I see it like in both industries. It's like it becomes the lawyers and the realtors who want to win. It's not even the clients. It's like there are lawyers and realtors out there that behave that way, and that's not helpful for anybody. So
I, I
I'm
think what
watching the
happened.
time. So Cheryl, we'll end on you.
Okay, I think what it is that if when you're talking about whether it's a realtor or a lawyer or what their reputation is, it all has to do with ego. And if you don't have a huge ego, I think you're going to win more cases.
Yeah,
That's my
yeah.
take.
That,
So
Because
everybody,
I don't have a huge ego. That's why.
no, no. So everybody is, hey, it's a great way to end off. Spread kindness, right?
right.
Be good.
Exactly. Right.
But we will definitely do another segment on communication if that wasn't heard. and all sorts of negotiation styles still, and we can dig deeper. But everybody have an awesome Tuesday, and we will see you next week on IG Live with the Grass Group. Thank you so much, Nandishi, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All
Okay.
right,
Nice seeing you.
take
Bye.
care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.